Hi my loves, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, welcome back to my channel. So today I will be telling you guys a story about a young girl called Miriam. Please do well to like, share and subscribe after watching. There is a young girl called Miriam. Miriam had always been a woman of faith. At 24, she believed in God's perfect timing, trusting that one day He would lead her to the man meant for her. Every Sunday, she attended St. Mark's Church, not just for worship, but for the peace it brought her heart. One particular Sunday, as the choir's voices filled the air with the sweet melody of Amazing Grace, Miriam felt a presence beside her. She turned and saw a man, tall, well-dressed, with a confident yet humble demeanor. Their eyes met briefly, and he offered her a polite smile. Something about him felt familiar, as if their souls had met before. After the service, as she lingered near the entrance, the man approached her. "Good morning," he greeted with a warm voice. "That was a powerful sermon today." She nodded. "Yes, Pastor James always knows how to speak to the heart." "I'm David," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "Miriam," she replied, shaking his hand lightly. From that day forward, their conversations became frequent. Every Sunday, David made sure to find her, and soon, their friendship deepened. He was kind, well-spoken, and had a way of making her laugh effortlessly. They talked about life, faith, and dreams. David never spoke much about his personal life, but Miriam, lost in the beauty of his company, never questioned it. Weeks turned into months, and her admiration for him blossomed into love. She found herself thinking about him even outside of church, praying that this was the man God had chosen for her. One Friday evening, David invited her to a charity event hosted by the church. Excited, Miriam agreed, believing it was another step in their growing relationship. However, before she could even arrive, fate had something unexpected in store for her. That afternoon, she stopped by a cafe near the church to grab a cup of tea. As she stood in line, her eyes drifted to a cozy corner of the cafe, and what she saw made her world stop. David sat at a table, laughing joyfully. Across from him sat a woman, beautiful, radiant, and next to her were two young children. They looked like a picture-perfect family. The way the woman touched his hand, the way the children called him Daddy, shattered every illusion Miriam had built. Her hands trembled as she turned to leave, but in her haste, she bumped into someone. "Whoa, are you okay?" a familiar voice asked. She looked up and saw Daniel, David's close friend, another member of their church. "Miriam?" he asked, concern filling his voice. Tears welled in her eyes. "He's married, isn't he?" Daniel sighed, his expression confirming her worst fear. "Yes. And I'm so sorry." Miriam felt a wave of shame and heartbreak crash over her. How could she have been so blind? Without another word, she rushed out of the cafe, feeling as though the very ground beneath her had given way. A season of pain and healing. For weeks, she withdrew from church, embarrassed and heartbroken. She ignored David's attempts to reach out, refusing to be part of something that would destroy another woman's home. It wasn't just the heartbreak that hurt, it was the betrayal of trust, the shame of falling for someone she never truly knew. But Daniel didn't let her go. He would send her messages now and then, simple, kind words that reminded her she wasn't alone. When she didn't respond, he respected her space but remained present. One evening, after weeks of silence, he knocked on her door. "I know you probably don't want company," he said gently, "but I just wanted to check on you." Miriam hesitated before finally letting him in. They sat in her small living room, the silence between them heavy. "I feel so foolish," she finally admitted. "I gave my heart to a man who was never mine." Daniel shook his head. "You're not foolish, Miriam. You were deceived. Love, even when misplaced, is never foolish. It's what makes us human." His words were comforting, but Miriam still struggled to forgive herself. Over time, Daniel continued to be a source of encouragement. He invited her to events, reminded her of God's love, and never pressured her to move on before she was ready. Slowly, she started healing. A new beginning. One day, after months of rebuilding herself, Miriam returned to St. Mark's. She had been afraid to step back into the church where her heart had once been broken, but she realized that her faith was bigger than her pain. After the service, Daniel found her. "It's good to see you here again," he said with a smile. "It's good to be back," she admitted. As the months passed, their friendship deepened. But unlike before, Miriam was more cautious with her heart. Daniel never rushed her, never pressured her into something she wasn't ready for. He simply stood by her, proving with his actions that love should be kind, patient, and honest. One evening, as they walked through the park after a church meeting, Daniel finally spoke the words he had been holding in for so long. "Miriam, I know you've been hurt before, and I would never want to be the reason you experience pain again. But I need you to know, I've grown to love you, not because you're perfect, but because you're strong, kind, and full of faith." Miriam's heart pounded. She had been afraid to love again, afraid to trust. But looking at Daniel, she realized that love, when given by the right person, wasn't supposed to be painful. After a long pause, she smiled. "I've been afraid for so long, but maybe love isn't meant to be feared." And from that moment on, they built something beautiful, something honest, something real. A love meant to be. 2 years later, Miriam stood at the altar, dressed in white, her hands trembling in Daniel's. As she looked into his eyes, she realized that her pain had not been in vain. Had she not met David, had she not suffered heartbreak, she might never have opened her heart to the man who was truly meant for her. As the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Miriam smiled, knowing that sometimes God allows heartbreak not to punish us, but to lead us to something greater. Because when one door closes, another always opens. Thanks for watching. I believe you learned a lot from Miriam's story. See you again on my next video. Bye.